Hello to all the viewers, whoever is watching us. Brand new, what do we call this? A podcast show, a conversation, a talk show. I don't know what we call this. This is basically a pure and raw conversation between two co-founders who are frustrated enough to build something new from a very long time, and finally this is happening now. My name is Dilip. I'm the co-founder of Uptake. I take care of operations at Uptake.
I'm Vinod. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Uptake.
Vinod, how long have been planning this to do this? Let's call it a podcast, a talk show.
We've been planning it since October.
Yeah.
Finally here we are.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah.
So we call this
Behind the returns.
Behind the returns. So if you ever wondered what's really behind the returns, this is a show for you. Vinod, let's start with where it all started, right? I believe, for a small context to all the people who are watching us, we've been working together from, I think, more than last 10 years, and we know each other from last, 20 years?
More than 20 years.
Yeah. So do you want to relive the moment where it all started, almost close to 10 years ago? I think when we started doing a BPO.
Exactly, like when we started a BPO company, that is where you remember Mark?
Mark. He is the one who literally ate our brains for hours together.
Exactly, he gave us hours of lectures on what exactly alternate investments are. So that's the first time ever we heard of something called alternate investments, right? It was 10 years back.
He started talking about something called bill discounting.
Correct.
Which was very new to us, and I think until that point of time, all we know was stock markets, mutual funds,
all the traditional investments.
And we just started exploring Bitcoin, Ethereum, the blockchain technology.
It just started to
we just started to know about it. We were not deep into the concepts. We just know about it. And Mark, he gave us lectures about bill discounting.
You remember how frustrated he was while he was explaining hours together on what exactly bill discounting is?
We don't know what bill discounting is, and we don't have any exposure to it. We don't know how it works. So I believe his lectures actually helped us in building or coming to this point of building Uptake.
When we researched about bill discounting, how difficult was it to find something related to that in India?
It is. So here we are talking something about 2014, 2015. And I remember that there was no big player in India who was doing something called bill discounting.
Correct.
We had few major players who were doing cryptocurrencies as an alternate investment. We were talking about alternate investments here.
Correct. So bill discounting got restricted to only the banks that were doing 10 years back.
Right. And our conversations were mostly around alternate investments, right? Just like we discussed. And as I said before, all we know was banks, and the bank interest was almost around, what percentage is it?
It's between 6.5 to 7.5 around.
Maximum.
That's the FD you're talking about.
Yeah. And that is what we usually know. That is what our fathers usually know. And
that is what been taught to us from generations altogether.
Exactly. If you have your money, just go put it in the bank. That will be safe, and you get
put it in FD and you will get your interest.
So our household conversations were even if you have great wealth, even if you are ultra rich, back then the conversations were, take this money, put it in the bank, stay safe, you get money, usse ऐश करो.
And I still believe when Mark gave that lectures to us on what exactly bill discounting means, then when we looked at the entire we had a Google search. We looked at around the players to talk to, and like you remember, like we couldn't find any at that point. And like even like when we wanted to start something next, like we always felt that we need to do something unique,
right,
which is quite sustainable in the market and which solves the real problem in the world, right?
Yeah. So we are talking about, as I said before, 2014, 2015. We started exploring the alternate investments other than the blockchain technology, and we started to learn about invoice discounting or bill discounting, whatever you call it.
Before we go ahead, like, should we explain what bill discounting is to the viewers?
I think yes. I think the CEO should do the honors.
Bill discounting essentially means, suppose if you have a company and you supply chemicals to Dr. Reddy's or Aurobindo, like any company which supplies goods to a blue chip company usually has a payment cycle of around 30 days to
90 days or 45 days, whatever.
So that is where it becomes bottleneck for any MSME, right? Because like their working capital is stuck, and like for the future growth and all, also this working capital plays a crucial factor.
Cash flow or working capital is quite important for any MSMEs.
Yeah. So that is where bill discounting essentially means those kind of invoices can be encashed on day one itself.
Right.
And there are like many banks, like NBFCs, there are many players in the market usually purchase this invoice at a discounted price, and it's a win-win situation for all. Like,
let's also try to give an example. Now you are in this, let's take the same example. You are a chemical company and I'm an enterprise. Let us say I'm Reddy's Lab, and what you essentially explained was you have an invoice, you have supplied material to me, you have supplied tons of chemical, and you have raised a bill, and as per my terms and conditions you have to wait for the next 60 days. That is when I clear the bill. And you have this issue of cash flows. So what you can do is you can reach out to an invoice discounting company and give your invoice. They will do your background verification, and if they feel that you are gonna return back the money after 60 days, they'll pay you the money on day one, like
at a discounted price.
That's amazing. So this actually helps the MSMEs. Okay, let me put this into a small perspective. To understand this basics, it took hours of understanding because it was relatively new for us 10 years ago.
Back, yeah.
And do you actually remember after learning about this, we were so much fascinated that we actually wanted to build a company 10 years ago.
10 years back, yeah.
So why do you think it took us so long? And we have also tried a couple of other businesses in between, but what do you think took us I'm asking you this because we already had a lot of conversations, right? I'm asking you this because I want the younger people who are watching this podcast, who wants to start a company, because I think in India, especially the teens or the youth, people who are still in college and passing out of college, these guys have n number of ideas in their mind, and all they know is just get money from somebody and start the company tomorrow. So it didn't happen with us, So let's talk about why it took 10 years, and maybe people can pick one or two things from that and plan their thoughts accordingly.
So basically, when I'll take it to where we all started it like 10 years ago, right? Where we wanted to build this invoice discounting company to start off. Then like when we looked at the market, we didn't know whether it's a product market fit right yet. We saw the problem. We thought like this will definitely click in India. And at the same time, we were afraid that we didn't have the enough expertise in the first place. And also, it's about like people's money, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's the people who has to invest in the product, right? And we thought we are not that experienced enough to pitch something to people, right? To invest. And like we didn't know like which vendors actually needed it, and like what kind of vendors to approach. We didn't know like how to start it.
Right. So after we understood the product. I remember both of us, along with Funny. By the way, Uptake has 4 co-founders. 2 of us are sitting and talking today. We'll slowly introduce the other 2 co-founders as well. So Funny and Mukesh are the 2 other co-founders. So I remember we, along with the other 2 co-founders, we went into the market. We started talking to a lot of vendors.
Yeah, like we attended every expo, right? Like what are expos that are available? We went into the expos, and our motto was only to ask different vendors, and whenever they did a contract with the blue chip company, what's the real suffering is, right? And you remember the stories that they told us?
Yeah.
You want to say some?
Yeah. So somebody was like, "Sir, अगर 15 लाख मिल जाता है ना, 10 दिन में वापस कर दूंगा." And this was everyone's story, right? This was a real problem.
Right.
A lot of people either end up paying a lot of interest. They borrow money from the markets and they end up paying a lot of interests, and end of the day, it becomes a huge burden on them.
Yeah, if you look at the vendor side also, they've done their work with the blue chip company, right? And this payment cycle, like which is associated with any service related to a blue chip company, so this becomes the bottleneck, right? So that is where it's not a loan that they wanted. It's like a working capital for the time in that they wanted.
And once we are 100% sure that the need is there with the vendors or the MSMEs, whatever we want to call them, we started figuring out a harsh reality that we cannot fund these companies from our own pockets, or if we cannot even take loan from a bank and then we cannot lend them. It doesn't work that way. So we thought, why not let retail investors put their money right into...
Yeah, before we bring retail investors, let's give the background stories of what retail investors are now. So basically, like in India, there's a huge problem, right? Like either Indians are too much investing in FDs, which are giving like far less than inflation, or Indians are investing like in much more volatile sector where like they don't know like what they're signing up for, and they don't know where the hit is also coming from.
Aryapar.
Yeah.
It is like you get good returns.
So that is where India lacks a trusted middle path where we can create a marketplace where like both vendors and people can come together and people can invest in a real business transactions, right? So this usually gives them their returns at a far lesser risk than any other product, right? Like so that is where like retail investor, that is where the idea of bringing the retail investors into this like came up.
Right. So we wanted to create a middle path, as you rightly said, which gives better returns than what your FDs do, and by taking out the ups and downs of a stock market. Now, coming back to the same question, why did it take so long for us to implement this plan?
So basically, like it's about understanding the market, right? Like it took like we spoke to vendors, we spoke to the people who are earning big from the stock market, and at the same time we spoke to people who lost big in the market.
Somebody's gain is somebody's loss.
So like see, generally who are gaining, they understand the market pretty well and they understand in and out of it, and they play their own game. But we are more interested to know about the people who are losing their money, right? Like so when we spoke to like lot of members, all were saying the same thing. Like either they didn't understand the market properly, or they thought like rest are investing and why not put my money in. Like it's usually like follow the path method like many of them implemented, and like the common point was they didn't know about any other alternate investments also. For them, investment in stocks, FDs, or like sovereign bonds, like that's the only factors that they know.
Okay, so talking about alternate investments, let's get back to the story that we are talking about. So as we discussed before, we started to explore this more than 10 years ago, and then we were doing research for or attending all the fairs for a good 2 or 3 years just to make sure that this actually works in India. And then I remember we got an opportunity to work with a lot of blockchain clients, right? So that is where we thought, why not start working with these blockchain clients to know more about alternate investments. So you have something to say about that phase of our learnings or journey, whatever you want to call it.
We wanted to build alternate investment, like that is clear, like 10 years back also.
Yeah, that is stamped.
Luckily, like we came across players who wanted marketing in blockchain, so that gave us great insights of how does a crypto world work, like how does a smart contracting work, what's the blockchain, what's the transparency that's needed, and this gave us like great exposure on one of the class of alternate investment. And also as time went on, like once we spoke to like many vendors who are in need of working capital, we came across like many forms of alternate investments, right? Like where there's a supply chain finance, there's a revenue based finance, and there are like SIDB loans and all also, like so. Then we thought many people didn't know this factor, like they were either all these alternate investments were restricted to only a certain class of people, like where HNIs would invest, or like an institutions would invest, or the banks or NBFCs. Like it was never for a retail investor. Like the understanding about alternate investment is far less in India. Even like when you are researching about alternate investment, like how many platforms actually spoke about this? Like
I think back then we never found any company who were actually doing this. I think right now we have few companies, but then all this started post-COVID is what I believe. COVID is the turning point for a lot of things in India. So I think the alternate investment ideology among the people really boomed after the lockdown is.
Yeah, and that's the growth to be seen year on year, like it is going by 25%. Like that's a great sign.
Usually, right, people also talk about mutual funds, and famously,
and since the mutual funds topic came up, we have seen like lot of influencers talking about like mutual funds, right? Like where they usually ask you to invest in mutual funds, and they came up with something called mutual fund sahi hai.
Now if you turn on the TV, Sachin Paji,
Mahi bhai were actually like pitching like mutual fund sahi hai. So do you think that mutual funds is sahi hai?
अगर सचिन पाजी और माही भाई बोल रहा है सही है तो सही है, बट द मोमेंट दे से सही है, यू विल हैव अ डिस्क्लेमर, म्यूचुअल फंड्स आर सब्जेक्टेड टू मार्केट रिस्क, right? So you have that famous line, so you have your answer there.
Yeah, like
there is always a risk associated.
It's usually the statement after what they say is really matters, like
right. So there is always risk in everything. And having said that, the next question that comes up from the people is bill discounting or invoice discounting really safe? Do you have, is it zero risk?
See, first of all, there is no concept called zero risk in investing. Even in FDs, there is if a bank has a bankruptcy, then usually like you will get only 5 lakh insured from the RBI, and like what are above 5 lakhs is usually at risk, right? So when an instrument called FD has a risk, I don't think any other product is a risk free in India. But the main thing lies in how a platform is mitigating the risk, how an instrument is mitigating the risk. Invoice discounting is a great risk free when done properly.
Right. So I think let's talk about risk in a separate episode, because that's
an episode in itself.
Yeah, a long topic, and it takes a lot of time to discuss about that. I think we'll put that in a different episode, as you rightly said. For now, let's come back to our journey. Being the first episode, let's stick to the journey itself. And we were discussing that we were introduced to blockchain technology and we started working. We understood how blockchain or cryptocurrencies work, and then we realized something. Initially, when we thought of doing invoice discounting, we wanted to make the volatility zero, right? You want to do something or give something which has fixed returns. And cut to cryptocurrency, it is more volatile than stock markets. So probably that's the reason why we thought, let's not get into it. And we have channelized all our energy onto what we are currently building now.
We are coming back to invoice discounting. So generally, it doesn't depend on any market factor. So usually people know where their money is coming from and how much they are earning much prior. Because before investing in the deal itself, they know on what deal they are investing, what is the kind of risk that is associated with the deal, and they'll understand the returns also much prior, because they are investing in a real business transaction. So it usually becomes a zero volatility product.
So what we have discussed here is basically our journey of Uptake, being co-founders. We have tried to give insights to people who are watching us about how it all started, what we are going to do. I think from our conversation, people already know that we are doing invoice discounting.
So basically, this 10 years, we have researched enough. We have known the market. We have known how our product is market fit. We spoke to many number of investors to understand their point of view. And we spoke to many vendors who are in need of a working capital. And also, ours is not just invoice discounting platform, where we wanted to develop a versatile platform. We are starting with invoice discounting, but in a few months from now, we might start corporate bonds also. So it's usually the goal has always been how can we bring two parties together, on the one side the vendors or the companies who are in need of their working capital, and people who can invest in those working capital. And the biggest thing lies in how we are mitigating the risk. So that is where it differentiates us from the rest of the market. Because as we go on in this journey, as we introduce the factors that we are implementing at the process that we are implementing at our company, and how it mitigates the risk, usually will be that trust gaining factor for all the people also. So this 10 years of understanding took us, and now since we thought this is the time, now we have a great exposure of everything, every in and out of it. Now we thought we need to start it now. Before we go ahead, I wanted to ask you something else. You are seeing many big players in the market. You are usually dominating invoice discounting. What is that thing that you feel that will make us win over a big player in the market?
There are a lot of bigger players in the market, as you rightly said. But if you go out and talk to people, you find a lot of people who still don't know what invoice discounting is, and there are a lot of vendors who are still waiting for their invoices to be discounted, right? So it is the basic demand and supply, right? There is a huge demand that is still not being able to meet or cater to the needs. So not just us, I think we still need more platforms coming up. Even if there are 10-20 good players in the market who starts in the next few years, I think the Indian market will still be able to cater.
When we looked at the market size also, invoice discounting is on a 20 lakh crore market. And usually all the players put together are doing something between around 10 crores or 10 lakh crores a year, right?
So there is a huge gap. So yeah, this is a good thing. I think we are doing this at the right time.
And also we usually focus on our investors, like we had a strict investor first policy that we wanted to roll out.
Yeah.
So basically, like, I'll tell you like another point, like what is the show all about? Like,
See, as we have given our introduction, it is more like a conversation between, two co-founders. The whole intention is to let the people know what really goes behind to start something, and how it is done. From I think we can wrap up this part of the discussion for the day, but the key takeaways from today's conversation, if somebody is watching this, I would say, do your research correctly, learn about alternate investments, and even if you are doing stocks, and I actually forgot something. The main motto or the main line that we usually tell to investors, which we'll continue to do, is don't put all your money at a single place. Even to us, even if you are an investor at Uptake, we don't ask you to put all your money in Uptake itself, right? We ask people to put some in fixed deposits. Having said that, especially post COVID, we have a lot of influencers. When people scroll the reels, they usually say that FDs cannot beat inflation. Inflation is more than what the kind of returns that you get in FD. But we always advise our investors to have some money invested in FDs. That is your safest bet. So put some in FDs. If you are somebody who wants to take some risk, go to stocks. But if you don't know how to invest in stocks, don't go there. Give your money to in mutual funds, and you get your returns based on how market is performing. Put some percentage of it in alternate investment platforms like us or Uptake, where you get fixed returns. That's what we always try to say. And yeah, I think people can learn a lot about investments. And having said that, we never ask people to put money, especially in this podcast. We are not going to give you any tips. We are not going to suggest you any stocks. We'll just talk about how financial instruments work. So, okay, before ending, I have a question, right? I told some of my other friends and even to my family that we are doing a podcast. We'll start a podcast. So I got one question from them, and I want to ask you the same question, and I want to see what you're going to answer for that. The question was, भाई तूने क्या उखाड़ लिया है कि you are doing a podcast?
I heard that a lot coming into the show also. Like, there are people who ask me like, why you want to do a podcast before being successful. I like when we're looking at many financial podcasts also, there are hardly any shows where founders are talking about their journey even before successful. And like, see, many times in India we only listen to successful people's stories and how does a successful founder have taken this company from scratch to a like unicorn company. And somewhere like this like the journey of a founder, what are the hardships that are involved for a founder, and like each day, like what is the kind of factors that like plays huge in a founder's life. Like none of them really talk about that. So here we wanted to talk about our journey. There will be many highs, there will be many lows, and there will be like many key decisions that will be taken. And then like there are days like when we'll have a great criticism faced also.
Yeah, sometimes when we get a tight slap from outside, we're going to discuss that here as well.
Exactly. So basically this will be all about our journey, a journey of a founder. because we don't want people to only know the success of a founder. Like, we want them to understand the journey behind it also. That is why we named the show as Behind the Returns. Like,
Perfect. I think that line defines how different this talk show or podcast is going to be. It is more about the journey and not the success. That is basically the end product of the journey. So yeah, I think we're gonna have more conversations. We're gonna discuss a lot about different financial instruments, risks, and people who enjoy the financial discussions. And if you think you love to involve in these conversations, just keep following us. You will come back with lot of such conversations, interesting conversations. And yeah, I think
looking forward for what we are building next.
Perfect.
Thank you, Dilip.
Thank you, Vinod. I think bye to all the viewers. We'll see you in the next episode.